All right. So everyone at home's probably tired of hearing, but we did an entire interview and forgot to hit record. So now it's like one of the first things we do. Actually, we got to change the settings and just make it so it's automatic. Like the moment we even go on that record, it just automatically begins. So
Man, that's crazy.
yeah, and that was we were about an hour and 45 in. We just felt like we got them to open up and actually start to tell some really cool stories about some of the early ADCCs. And then they go, hey, isn't there supposed to be a red light?
Damn,
So,
that is wild, man. I can't imagine doing a whole show and then not having it recorded. That would have been a pain in the butt.
yeah, and they haven't called us back since. So, so, but how are things going?
Good. Can't complain,
So you guys got your no, sorry. So you're back into the arena that you guys had been hosting here. So Renegades was the first event that we did.
That's
and then
right.
Because due to COVID, you guys weren't able to use your main venue, the actual arena.
Yeah, so pre-COVID, we were doing shows at, multiple different venues. We actually didn't go to Renegades until after COVID. But but yeah, it's good to be back out of COVID times with the crowd, putting on real shows, having the energy for the fighters, and for me too, as a promoter, feeling the energy in the room. It's kind of that motivation, to keep making these shows bigger and better.
Right. Well, and to be honest, I mean, I'm not big on the nightclub venues, but Renegades was actually not bad. The way the cage was set up with the lighting rig around it and everything else, Renegades actually turned out to be a pretty good venue. Compared to some of the other nightclub venues, I mean, the cage got center stage, decent seating around the cage and the like. We did one, which one was it? Tier nightclub, I think it was, in downtown Orlando.
Yep.
And I went in and we had a couple guys fighting on the card, and I'm on the second level and I'm looking down at the cage and I got a couple guys warming up. And I'm looking at it going, there's a support for the railing that I'm like, looks like it's only a couple inches away from the chain link on the cage.
Oof.
So I think my son was in the cage warming up with one of the guys, and I'm like, hey, I'm like, go over there and put your shoulder into that chain link because we know it moves.
Yeah, it
And
gives.
put your shoulder into it, and I want to see if you can touch that brace. And sure enough, it didn't take him hardly anything at all. So I got to the promoter, and the promoter's like, no, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And he goes, look, and he comes up and he kind of pushes on the chain link. And I go, hold on, let me come downstairs. I'm going to push you into the chain link and let's see if I can make you hit it. And he goes, let's move the cage.
Man, I'll be honest with you. I was never a big fan. I was never a fan at all, really, of nightclub venues. That wasn't my idea coming into, creating XFN and putting on these shows. The real inspiration behind putting on these shows was the UFC.
Nice. Yeah.
And the UFC does not operate in nightclubs. You envision, a big venue with the cage in the center and nice lights and a lighting rig and, big crowd and cameras. And that's what I was envisioning. And that's what I try to, to do with every show. Coming out of COVID, obviously, we kept putting on shows during COVID.
Right. Yeah.
Which without the help of our sponsors would not have been possible at all, because there goes all of our revenue, all those ticket sales. That's how we pay the bills.
Yeah.
Because people forget that there's a lot of bills that need to get paid when putting on these shows. It's not 100% of ticket sales go into the promoter's pocket. It doesn't really work that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so coming out of COVID, going into Renegades was a good introduction back into the live crowds. But Renegades really is a pretty good venue. I mean, like you said, the cage is centered. There's a nice lighting rig, that provides lighting all around it. We've got 30 tables of seating, high top tables of seating that surround the cage that gives you, a great spot to sit down, enjoy the fights, order food, order drinks.
Right.
Renegades is a full restaurant. So you get some pretty good food while you're there. And then we've packed in about, 600 people to that venue.
Right.
So it's deceivingly big.
Yes.
It's a good size.
When we first drove up and saw the place from the outside, we were like, man, this is going to be a very small house. Like you said, it's deceiving. When you get inside, it was way more roomy, way more open. I've been into bigger venues that felt smaller than that. And so that one we were pleasantly surprised. That was our first XFN to do. And we came in and it was at Renegades. And like I said, the building is deceivingly, we've been into plenty of nightclubs and the like. Actually, first nightclub I ever did an event in was the Fat Cat Music House and Lounge in Modesto, California.
Oh, wow.
Shout out to them. They used to put a boxing ring in the middle of their venue. And then it was a 2-tiered, kind of like the Gilt nightclub in Orlando, kind of like that, where the ring would be shoehorned in. I mean, not a lot of space at all. But with a small amount of people, it felt big. I mean, when the crowd would get going, I mean, it sounded like there was thousands of people when there were only hundreds of people. I mean,
right.
And that's the feel of that area. And for some people, it can throw them off. When they're used to a small venue like that, and then they go to a big venue, it can throw some people off. It can be a little bit different, and vice versa. When they're used to one thing, the same thing. The size of the cage can throw some people off. People forget, man, that UFC cage is huge,
it's enormous.
It's
enormous.
I mean, I tried to tell people when watching it, going like, you see that little warning line on the inside? I'm like, that octagon is still bigger than most of the cages that people fight in.
Yep.
I mean, and that still has like another 4 feet to go in all directions. I mean,
no, that's right, man. That's 100% true. Yeah, the size of the venue can play a part, in a fighter's performance. It can be intimidating, coming out to a huge venue with a huge crowd, especially young fighters. We primarily, work with amateur fighters,
right?
Providing them the platform to gain their experience as amateurs before they become pros. But that's kind of been, what we've been known for, almost since inception of XFN is, giving that big stage feel, even in your early on days. And I pride myself in that. That's what I wanted. So it's actually what we try to do. And we were able to earlier this year, we try to mix in the bigger venues with the smaller ones. So the past couple of years, we've been averaging like 8 or 9 shows a year. So this past January, we did a big Pro-Am show at a venue called The Center in Coral Springs. And that's a fantastic venue that had a seating capacity of 1,500.
Nice.
Theater style. It's a little bit different. It's not your typical MMA type arena where the cage is in the middle and all the crowd is around it.
Yeah.
It's a theater. So, the cage was on a stage and then you had 1,500 seats, theater style in front of it. But it was, multi-tiered.
Right.
There wasn't a bad seat in the house. That I love that venue, the Center. It's really got everything that you need for the fighters and for the fans. Huge warm-up areas for the fighters with that real UFC feel walkout.
Right.
They're walking out through the back corridor, through backstage, and they can hear the crowd going crazy because the cameras are following them down the hallway. So the crowd is watching it on the projector screens.
Nice.
And it's really hyping up the fighters. So by the time they get to the stage and they see everybody, the energy is just on another level.
Right.
So it's cool to be able to, have the majority of the shows being, to kind of build confidence and build the fighters up. And then a couple times a year, provide them with this bigger stage to really get that big show feel, which will help them, once they become pros and once they start fighting on the big stage.
Well, and your guys, so your stuff is on Flow Combat, I believe,
Yep.
and your guys's video and the broadcast crew and everything else is, I mean, top notch. I mean, I was actually the first fight that we did when we were watching some of the stuff on Flow Combat. I mean, it's clean. You know, we were actually I'm trying to remember, we were just watching a fight, and in the middle of the fight, they cut to a replay of something that happened early. We're like, I'm watching this fight, do a replay in between rounds or picture in picture. But I mean, like right as one fighter's getting ready to take down the other one, they cut to a replay to show a punch that just landed 15 seconds earlier, but the fight's still going on. I mean, like your guys's footage, the video, the comment. I mean, everything was spot on. I mean, everything was, like you said, it was really giving a very professional production, even though it's an amateur fight. I mean, and that was actually really nice.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I got to give credit to my team. I've been working with the same team for, man, I mean, like 7 years now. As far as the commentary team, Blake Bowman and Sean Ambrosino, I think they do a fantastic job. They're funny. They're very knowledgeable. Sean's a high-level black belt, multiple-time world champion.
Yeah, he's kicked my butt more than once.
Mine too.
I had met him prior to, like, I had no clue that he was connected with XFN, and I came down and saw him walking in the back and everything else. And I'm trying to remember if it was Pans or one of those competitions where we went up against each other. And yeah, I was not on the good end of that one.
Yeah, he's a big boy. He's a big boy, and he's very knowledgeable, very skilled, but a big teddy bear, with really good grips,
Yes.
But yeah, no, I mean, between him and Blake Bowman, I mean, I think they do an excellent job with commentary. They're really invested, in what they do. They love it. They love it's performing for them. They love performing for the audience, and they love getting to know the fighters. And when we have the fighters that compete with us consistently, it kind of builds on each event. And Blake and Sean, they start to really build a profile for them. And you can hear it in the commentary. You can tell who's fought with XFN multiple times versus who's a newcomer, just based off of, how much they have to talk about and how much they have to say.
Yeah. Well, so, and even that, because I'm one that's known for being very critical of color commentary and commentary in general. I mean, I've put it out there quite a bit. Like, I wish for the UFC, and this is no knock on Joe Rogan or any of the others, but there's times I just don't want to hear them. I would like to just see. COVID did this thing where finally I got to experience the fights the way I enjoy them. The crowd noises were knocked down, and literally you could hear the coaching from the corners. You could hear the thud and the real impact of every punch and every kick and everything else, especially when the UFC was doing their stuff out of the Apex Center,
right?
And things of that nature. And I think fans got to hear what we get to hear when we're actually cage side, when we're actually coaching our fighters and things of that nature. And it's a different experience. They can see a punch, but when you hear that wet thud, it makes a difference. When they throw that leg kick and you hear it, I mean, you hear the difference between a slap and it actually sinking in deep into the leg. You hear the difference. And so during COVID, I think people actually got to experience that. And my complaint with some of the commentary is that they just talk too much. They don't allow you. It's like, I'm watching the fight. I don't need you to tell me he just threw a right hand. I literally just saw it.
Yeah.
I mean, the days of, to be honest, the days of true color commentary, that's from radio.
Exactly.
I mean, that's from when people couldn't watch it. So the guys literally had to describe everything that was going on. in my opinion, commentary hasn't really evolved much. So I'm very critical of commentary crews and the like. Again, I don't need them to just tell me what I just saw. I need them to tell me what I don't know. And that's where I thought your guys did a really great job, because they do come to it with a little deeper knowledge of not just the athletes, but the coaches, the
Mhm.
gyms that they come from, things of that nature. So some of their commentary was not just, there's a right hand, another right, there's a left. I mean, anybody can do that. And I thought that's where I thought that crew did actually a really good job of being a little different, and bringing something to the table, bringing their knowledge of what the fighters are, their backgrounds when they're walking out, going into the cage, and talking about something a little bit deeper than just literally telling me what I just watched.
Right.
That's where I give them props for that. I thought they did a really great job. And that's one of the reasons why I really thought that the way just the whole Flow Combat broadcast was done was extraordinary. I mean, it looked really good and sounded good.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think that I have a great team. They put in a lot of work. They love what they do. And beyond the commentators, I mean, the producers, the
Yes,
producers
the
that's
camera
behind
cuts,
the
the
scenes.
way, I mean, all was very, very good.
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to Israel Cantu. I mean, that guy's all over the place. He's involved with almost every show that happens in Florida, and some outside of Florida, and he puts in a lot of hard work also.
Now I'm happy. I got there was a guy that trained with us before COVID, and we threw a couple fights out here. So we rented the cage, got a high school gymnasium, and did it as a fundraiser for their wrestling team. And
Nice.
my son did a great job. It was his baby. I don't lay any claim to that. He did the matchmaking. He got us the sanctioning through IKF and things of that nature. And he put on one hell of a show. But on one of them, this one guy who was going to Stetson College, he was going for marketing and things of that nature. And so he needed to do an internship. So he interned with us. So he was our videographer for the fight. So he was up on the crow's nest doing video and things of that nature. And shout out to Malachi, because I was watching the Gaethje versus Oliveira weigh-ins, and in a short amount of time, he went from being our intern and doing a video of our amateur fight league to being in attendance as a media representative at the weigh-ins.
Get out.
And so, I mean, and that will happen within like 2 years.
Man, that's awesome. That's the other cool thing about the amateur scene. It's not just the amateur fighters that you're going to eventually see on bigger stages, but it's everybody involved.
Yeah.
Camera operators, producers, ring card girls, everything. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And so like when he was up on that little crow's nest filming, I mean, literally he's dancing. He was having such a blast doing it. And it was kind of one of those where, I mean, he's like, I can't believe this is what I get to do for my internship. He's like, I mean, he got to be there to basically do his internship and basically mentor with us throughout the process of setting up the show, with watching Christian do some of the matchmaking, things of that nature, and then, I knew that he got a job with a news media company. I didn't realize, like I said, I watched his Instagram feed and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, that view is not him watching a screen. I'm like, that's live. So I messaged him and I'm like, dude, are you at the weigh-ins? He's like, yeah. He's like, I'm here reporting on the weigh-ins.
That's awesome.
I'm like, that is incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
so like you said, it's not just, we all hope that a fighter comes through XFN, gets picked up by one of the bigger shows, and then you get to say, hey, we were part of that. That's what our origin was all about. It's the beginnings. It's giving people that opportunity, and to be able to say somebody who came through your ranks now is on the big show. It's on UFC, or it's on Bellator or PFL, or one of those organizations, to be able to say, I mean, they cut their teeth, and earn their way. So how did you start the XFN? I mean, what was kind of your beginnings with it?
So I wanted to be a fighter. One of my best friends, my best friend at the time, was #1 ranked amateur 145er. This was back in 2011. Aaron Rajman. I don't
Okay.
know if you've heard of Aaron, the Mata brawler. May he rest in peace. He's the one that really got me introduced to the sport at all. I was pretty naive. I wasn't one of those that kind of knew about the UFC from the early days. I kind of got into it when I was, about 21 years old. So my original intention was to be a fighter. He was competing at the time. He was undefeated. He was trying to help the promoters find more fighters. And I said, "Oh, I'm a tough guy, like let me fight." And he said, "Why don't you, come train with me a little bit first, and then we'll get you a fight." And I remember that first time I went on the mats with him, he tapped me, I think 30 times in a minute,
Right.
literally in a minute. Man, it was such a, what's the word I'm looking for? It
But
put me into perspective. It was like,
we,
wow.
we call that, he gave you his business card.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, I mean, like he kind of shook me into reality. Like, hey, man, if this is what you want to do, you have to train. You
Right.
can't just be a tough guy, because tough guys, they're only tough, walking through the door. They're not so tough when they're walking out. But after that beatdown that I got, that was just so it put me in awe, really opened up my eyes. I really had two options. It was either one, like, forget it, I never want to experience that again, or two, like, I need to learn how to do that to the next guy.
Yes.
And that's what I went with. I was like, wow, I need to learn how to do that, because that to me was magic. The
Right.
way he manipulated me and the way that he just did with me what he wanted and submitted me so quickly, so proficiently, and so many times in such a little amount of time, I was like, that's incredible. So
Yeah.
that's what kind of got me the bug into wanting to train jujitsu. And, from there, it was boxing and kickboxing and put it all together. And finally, by the time I got to fight, it was after, 3 or 4 events that were supposed to take place. And, I get ready and I cut weight and I show up and there's no opponent.
Yep.
And I show up to the weigh-ins and the promoter says to me, "Oh yeah, your guy's coming to weigh in the day of the fight. It's good for you. That means he's small. Don't worry." And then I show up the day of the fight and, "Oh, I don't know, he didn't answer his phone."
Yeah. Yep. And we can't find him. And he turned off his social media.
Yep.
And that's the classic.
All those stories. So, I mean, after the last time, I was supposed to fight on a Thursday night in West Palm Beach, down the street from Renegades, actually, funny enough. And same thing happened. That time I thought it was really going to happen. So I had a bunch of friends and family that bought tickets to come out, and didn't get the fight. And the promoter refused to give, a refund to my friends and family who came out. And so I was so annoyed. And I told my buddy Aaron, I was like, "Dude, you got to find me another fight." And it just so happened that the very next night in Orlando was an event, a Amateur Fighting Nation, AFN, was around at the time.
Okay.
And so he got in touch with a matchmaker, and they actually had an opening in my weight class. So we left West Palm Beach around midnight, drove to Orlando, got there around 3-ish in the morning, slept at our buddy's dorm at UCF, and woke up, weighed in at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I got very little to no sleep.
Right.
Weighed in, went back, hung out for the rest of the day, and then went back to the venue at 7 o'clock at night to fight. And it was a nightclub. I don't remember the name of it. But what I do remember was warming up in a handicap bathroom stall, being given gear that was ancient, fallen apart, terrible condition. And then the next thing
already soaking wet.
Oh yeah, disgusting. And the next thing I know, they're coming and calling my name, and they're like, "The DJ called you. You got to go. They already called your name." And nobody told me that I was even up next, right? So I walk out to the cage, and there was, I don't know, 30 people in the club. The floors were sticky, and I'm still excited, but I get into the cage, and Wasn't exactly the feel I was looking for, but I was finally excited to fight, and dominated the first round, felt great, went into the second round, did really good. I was a sloppy white belt with like a couple months training, gave up my neck with like, I don't know, 20 seconds left, and tapped to a really weak choke that I probably didn't need to tap to.
Right.
But with all the adrenaline dump and all the excitement, I was kind of just happy to have gotten to fight. And in my mind, I was going to live to fight another day.
Right.
And if I would have known that was going to be my last time ever actually getting to fight, I would not have tapped.
Right.
But it is what it is, you know. Unfortunately, I was scheduled a couple more times after that to fight, and the same thing happened over and over again. Show up to weigh-ins, he's not there. They say showing up the day of, and it didn't happen. So at that point, I decided, you know, there's got to be a better way.
Right.
There's got to be a better way. I bet you I can do a better job putting on shows than all these promoters. And that's when I decided, you know, okay, I gotta do it myself. And I got offered a matchmaking position with Fight Time Promotions, which was a known organization in South Florida at the time, and match made a few amateur fights for them. And I actually went to the owners with a bunch of the ideas that I had, but they didn't want to invest in the shows. You know, oh, they're just amateurs.
Right.
You know, oh, you know, we don't need to. You know, we got to keep the cost down. This and that. So eventually, I was like, all right, well, see ya. You know, I'll just go do it myself. You know, I want it to be great, and that's when I put the work in, and XFN 1 rolled out November 20th of 2013.
Nice.
Took place at Tootsie's Knockers Sports Bar. It was at a strip club in Miami. But that very first show was everything that I wanted in a show.
Right.
It was organized. The fighters that were scheduled to fight got to fight. The cage was in the center of a big room with 40 tables around it, with plenty of standing room as well. There was, I think, 8 projector screens showing the fights. We had full video production, big warm-up areas in the back, clean gear. It was everything I wanted. And you know, thank God, with the help of God and with the hard work that was put in, it was a success.
Yeah.
And it kind of just rolled on from there.
Because yeah, it's tough. I mean, I used to go to a lot of fights back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Now, you know, because in my area, we had seen the UFC. I mean, my introduction was UFC 2. And, you know, some guy shows me the video. It had just done the pay-per-view the night before. Watched, it was Pat Smith do the vicious, you know, elbow attack on Scott Morris.
Nice.
And so, yeah, I'm watching it. And then I sought out UFC 1, and of course, you know, in UFC 2, I see that Ken Shamrock is Lockford, California, which is like 10 minutes down the road from us. So I got excited, you know, and everything else. So we got into early MMA pretty early, not in its infancy. We were never part of the UFC or nothing like that. But I got lucky that with my instructor, you know, that when we started doing jiu-jitsu, he started with Cesar Gracie and Ralph Gracie originally. They were out of the same academy in San Francisco. This would probably be about 90, maybe 94. And I was already training with him when everything began. And so I started training with him, and then he had an early fight team. The first ones out of the 209. So when the Diaz brothers are flashing 209, everything else, my instructor, Eric Shingu and Steve Heath, those guys launched the 209. I mean, MMA in the 209 does not exist without those two guys. I mean, they are the pillars that launched that whole thing. And I got lucky enough to be with those guys in the beginning. So we were already in the game, and we would go to these shows, and a lot of them would not be real. I mean, who was back in the late 90s throwing real shows? I mean, unless you were the UFC, or the only other one that I knew of was the IFC, the International Fighting I don't even think it was championships, but they were one of the others that were throwing fights and kind of doing a UFC style thing. And we were hearing on the underground that UFC qualifying matches were happening up at the Indian Casino in Jackson, California, up at the Jackson Rancheria. We were like, no, there's no way. There's no way. I mean, it's a small town out in the middle of nowhere. There's no way UFC qualifiers are being held up there. And sure enough, they were. I mean, sure enough. Now, not by the UFC, but a lot of guys that I got to watch there ended up in the UFC. It's the first time I ever met Chuck Liddell. Chuck Liddell was not Chuck. He was a kickboxer from San Luis Obispo Kickboxing. He was not in the UFC yet or anything else, but that's the first time I ever met him was in that, which was in a parking lot out in front of the hotel out in the middle of nowhere,
Classic, man.
But I mean, it was awesome. I mean, it was, or some of them were literally like by today's standards, they'd just be called smokers.
Mm-hmm.
They were just happening in a gym, and we go in, lock the doors because it was illegal, and and then that was it. I mean, the fights would go down. The rules were questionable at best. They were smart enough on some of them to say, hey guys, this ain't the real deal, so let's use gloves. But you'd see, you could tell who was who by what gloves they chose. Like, I don't know if you remember like the old school Bruce Lee Kempo gloves with the fingers. Yep. Some guys would be wearing those, and other guys would be wearing Harbinger bag gloves with the palms cut out. I mean,
that's wild, man.
So you knew who was who. You're like, I don't know, that dude thinks he hits hard, and clearly doesn't care about grappling. I mean, because he's wearing these big ass gloves, and the other guy's wearing the small gloves. You're like, that dude's a grappler, so he's coming into, But that was fun, man. Those were the early days, of going into those fights. Most of them are unrecorded. Most of them, would never show up on any, but I mean, I've been to some big shows. I've been to, I've cornered people at 8,000 attendance. And man, I got to tell you, I was probably more nervous in some of those little backroom brawls, than some of these big venues. I mean, because the backroom brawls were sketchy as anything.
Oh yeah, man.
I mean, they were sketchy.
Yeah, no, that's wild, dude. That's really wild.
It's so crazy with XFN. What's one of your favorite memories of? I mean, you guys have thrown a lot of shows, so I mean, what's a couple of them that stand out as just being like, I can't believe like either that fight actually happened, or that fight, or that show even.
That's tough. That's really tough, actually. There was all right, well, there's a few. Okay, I got a couple. As far as shows, there's two that really stand out to me. The first one is XFN 4. XFN 4 actually took place at FAU Arena. It was the first arena show that we did at Florida Atlantic University in South Florida. And 14 fights, all MMA fights. All of them were finishes. Not a single one went the distance.
Wow.
That was a wild night. And you can actually find all those fights on our YouTube channel.
Nice.
On the XFN YouTube channel, just type in XFN 4. All of them are there. Great night of fights. That one stands out simply because, how often do you have a full fight card where not a single one goes to the judges?
Right. Yeah.
You know, I almost wish I didn't even pay those judges. They just got to sit there. They had the best seat in the house. They didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then specifically that night we had, I'm pretty sure, the first female fight that we put on as XFN. And that was Trisha Cicero versus Azucena Rodriguez. Trisha, who you may or may not know, she went on to continue to compete with XFN, won the XFN flyweight title, went pro, fought with us as a pro, went on, fought in Titan FC, got called to fight in Invicta FC. And now she's married to Blake Bowman from Color Commentary.
Okay.
They actually met at XFN.
Oh,
But
nice.
that fight was one of the best fights that I'd ever seen between those two girls. And when they say, you know, that the girls steal the show,
They
it's
always do.
true. They always do. And that being the first time that we put on a women's fight, it stood out. You know, it stood out to me, and the performance that they put on. I mean, they went nuts. You really got to go back on YouTube and watch that fight. That was an entertaining fight.
Yeah, I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always said for the longest time that, I mean, whenever there's a women's fight on there, I mean, it's going to be a great fight. You know, they throw down hard, they go after it. I mean, it's one of those, the few fights I've almost been at different fights is usually because of my wife. The crowds have gotten way better. The casual fan has gotten way better when it comes to the women fighters getting their respect,
Yep.
getting their due for the work that they're doing. Because man, those early days when the women were fighting, the fans were brutal. I mean, what they would yell, what they would say, what, you know, they didn't give them respect,
Right.
you know, things of that nature. It was fun. I mean, so
My ears were burning. I had to come
yes,
in.
she wrote her name.
How's it going? Good to see you again.
Good. I was just wrapping it up with the guys, getting you know,
Nice.
mats mopped and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I
The
didn't
glamorous side of gym ownership.
have.
Right? The side that people don't get to see, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the 3 loads of laundry we're about to do tonight.
Man, I bet. But no, I mean, yeah, it took a while for women to gain respect in the sport, but I think that, like you said, the casual fan, they become more intelligent. They've learned more to respect the fighters because they've also realized that these aren't just, a lot of times they're beautiful, you know, they're athletes, you know, and
Right.
they're beautiful, but you very rarely find a female fighter who is a timid fighter.
Yes.
You don't really see them kind of like sitting back and waiting to respond. They're usually in each other's face, and or very technical.
Yes.
So in either way, you get everything you could hope for out of a fight. You get that aggression, that aggressiveness, and then you also get the beauty of the technique.
Right.
So it's always a great performance. By
I
the
think
way.
most of these girls are in gyms where they're the only girl.
Mhm.
Or a small
So
handful,
they're-
if they're lucky.
Their fight team is usually a bunch of dudes.
Yeah.
And so they have to either get real technical or real aggressive, or they're just not going to survive it. They're not going to last.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And that makes for a really good performance at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, like when you're training at a gym for the guys, right? You got to train with the best in the gym in order to be the best. They're going to push you to be better. You know, you're going to have to be, you know, quicker. You're going to have to be smarter. You're going to have to be stronger. And, you know, for the women, that's what they're having to train with. And it's great. It's great for them, I think. You know, it's always good when they have more female training partners because it gives them a little bit more of a realistic feel as to what they're going to meet inside the cage. But I believe that, you know, in any sport, you kind of train for longer than you need to perform. You train for harder than you need to perform. That way,
Yes.
when it's time to perform, you're going to be able to max out for the entire duration.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you just hope that the adrenaline dump gets managed, you know, so you don't, because that's the part that throws off a lot of people. They're like, man, you know, I'm doing XYZ. I mean, they're putting in road work. They're like, I can run a mile in 4 minutes and change. You know, why did I blow my wad? Why did I gas out?
It's that dump.
I'm like, it's different.
Yep.
It's not what you think.
That's why debuts are always so scary for us.
Oh
Because
yeah.
they could look amazing in the gym and that cage door closes, and you know, occasionally we've had it happen once or twice where we're like, oh fuck. this is not what we planned.
He goes out, makes his first connection, and then just puts the hammer down, and the dude survived the round.
Yeah.
And then they're like, my arms feel like concrete. And it's like, yeah,
It's all that
you
blood.
you had great cardio, but you just went full on anaerobic for 3 minutes straight. I mean,
And sometimes they surprise you the other way. Sometimes you think like, oh, yeah, he's a good fighter, but let's see how he performed. And then they blow your mind.
yes.
Yes.
We had a fighter like that come through XFN, Bryce Gamboa.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah.
But at one point he was, I think, the number 1 and number 2 ranked bantamweight in the state. And he's a pro now. But the first time that he walked in our cage, he was young. He might have been like 20 years old, lanky. He's a bantamweight, so he's not a big guy. And he comes in doing the Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there saying to one of my buddies at the fight, I was like, who does this kid think he is? It's his very first fight. He's a young little kid. Okay, let's see what he can do. And by the end of that fight, I was a huge fan. He just put on such a phenomenal performance. He actually, in my opinion, he knocked the guy out twice.
Wow.
It was one of those where the referee was not the best referee. And he knocked the guy out with a punch, and the referee gave him a standing 8 count in an MMA fight.
Wow.
No, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember. This was a little bit earlier on in the XFN days, and I don't remember if that was the rule at the time, because the rules in amateur have changed.
Yeah.
They have. They changed a lot. And we've only been in Florida now for about 13 years.
Mhm.
And the amount of rule changes that have taken place just since we've been reactive in the MMA scene in Florida, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I mean, because when we first started, there was no ground and pound allowed.
Right.
So until I think it was 3 fights. So if it went to the
It was
ground,
none at all. And
Right.
then it was, if you have 3 or more fights, then you can ground and
right.
pound.
And
Yeah.
I think Christian's first couple fights was no ground and pound rules.
Right.
I mean, so it was definitely interesting, even just watching the evolution of it just in the short time we've been in Florida, and the amount of rule changes. And then even now, the amount of rule changes that people think have taken place because the commission met and discussed it, but yet it hasn't been written into the actual rules yet.
Yeah.
I mean, like we were set for a kickboxing match, and we're down to the cage and we've got our headgear on. Okay. And the opponent's headgear was not right. It wasn't, they had a chin bar on their headgear. And so the promoter comes to us and goes, hey, how about this? No headgear. And we're like, we're fine if they are. And so they went over, and I basically said, ask them. I said, if they want to, we're game. If they don't want to, we're good too. I said, now part of it, I'll admit, was a little, I don't want to call it gamesmanship, but I was kind of putting an ownership on them. We were fine. We do most of our sparring without headgear anyway.
Mhm.
So we're like, without the headgear, it just kind of benefits us anyway, but I'm gonna let it be their choice.
Right.
So they chose no headgear. And as far as we know, it's the first non-headgear sanctioned match in Florida, but yet, technically speaking, the rule had not, they voted on it in their private meetings,
Right.
but no rules. So here we are, we're like, all right, cool, no headgear. And then we go to throw our own event,
And they're like, no.
and they're like, no, headgear is required. And not just any headgear. And
Specific headgear.
we're like, oh no.
Yeah, that's so, man, Florida is kind of a mess when it comes to amateur MMA. The state athletic commission doesn't want to be directly involved in
Correct.
the sanctioning of amateur fights. So what they do is they issue licenses to approved sanctioning organizations.
Right. There's a
which
lot of
pretty
them.
much, yeah, there's, oh my God, I think there's 20 of them right now in
Yeah.
the state of Florida that have an active license. But pretty much all you have to do is have an LLC and agree to follow the rules of amateur MMA. And as far as governing the fights, that's where it stops.
Right.
You know, they don't get directly involved in anything.
Correct.
So if a fighter, let's say, gets a medical suspension, you know, and the fight is sanctioned by ISKA, let's say, well, that fighter can then 2 weeks later go and fight on a different show that's governed by a different sanctioning body, and there's no communication between the two.
Right.
So they don't know that there's a medical suspension. And same with the rules. You know, one sanctioning body will allow the no headgear, one will require it. I even
Right.
saw some amateur shows that were doing MMA with no shin guards,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yes.
which that's not even in the talks right now.
Actually,
So-
I thought I saw that on UFC Fight Pass out of Pensacola.
Was it amateur or pro? Because UFC Fight Pass,
I thought it was amateur.
oh, well, as far as I know, UFC Fight Pass, they only broadcast pro.
Yeah, I thought
know
it was
what show
amateur,
you're
'cause-
talking about though.
'cause
And
we were talking about that, you know, here
Yeah.
going, and I thought that we had actually confirmed it with some other people that were in attendance, that there was an AMI fight with no shins.
man,
And now there's elbows.
yeah.
And then the question is, with pads or without pads? I mean,
Yeah, it's a little all over the place. I don't personally agree with the elbows so much.
Yeah,
yeah,
us too. Because they're amateurs.
Right.
There's no reason, you're not getting paid. Why are you going to get cut up?
It's the cuts.
Yes.
Exactly. That's where it's not so much the damage, because you can, you know, the argument was, well, you know, you can generate more force with a punch than you can with an elbow, but it's the cuts.
It's
the cuts.
At the end of the day, you're taking tissue damage, and
Yes.
you know, the scar tissue that builds up, that's only going to hurt you in the long run. And
Right.
you know, and then the medical bills, hello.
Yeah.
You know, the promoters, we provide an insurance policy for the fighters, but that insurance policy only covers so much.
Yes.
And there's the deductible,
Right.
which
That's-
the deductible is up, you know, that's on the fighters as well.
Correct.
Yes.
So I
Yeah,
don't.
we
I
had to
don't-
warn one of our fighters. I got the medical form for him and I said, listen, use this if you need to,
Yeah,
because there is a $500 deductible.
right.
I know you're broke.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's the part that, and we've even warned a couple of guys, because they're like, hey, like if you fight out of state, you know, that requirement for insurance is
May not be there.
not everywhere. I mean, you know,
Like-
in Florida it's a requirement, but in some of the other states it's not.
Right. Yeah, in some of the other states, it's full pro rules for the amateurs too.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Guards,
wasn't
elbows,
that at,
forearm
Because when
Mississippi.
when we first started, because California, when we first began, California first originally MMA was illegal. Then when California finally sanctioned it, they did not recognize amateur MMA. So when you were doing a fight like, let's say, an XFN, it was unified rules across the board. You know, so it was, you know, knees to the head of a standing opponent were legal. Elbows were legal in any position. Obviously, the 12-6 were
right.
not
Full
allowed.
leg locks. the
But
whole-
it was, yeah, I mean, heel hooks, spinal locks, you name it. It was the unified rules of MMA. Even though this was your debut fight, you were an 0-0 even on the amateur scene, because California did not recognize amateur MMA.
Yeah, we had a guy who was 0-0, went straight in.
Wow.
but- well,
My
but-
first fight.
But like I said, but that's what everybody did though, because
Yeah.
there was no AMI. So we would do in the early days, we would go into like there were some that we were able to get them into some unsanctioned pancration matches
Mhm.
where, you know, it was kicks to the head were legal, knees to the body, punches to the body, just no punches to the face, but kicks to the face were allowed. And then the submission game was live. So we got them a couple matches doing that to just kind of get them going. And then obviously some smoker, you know, hush hush smoker fights. You know, and then the first official fight is, you know, at the Placerville Fairgrounds for, you know, like one of the first fights we did was one of them, I'm trying to remember the name of or the second fight we did was an organization called Rebel Fighter.
Mm.
But again, it was it was almost all, and this was comical on one of them. This was their definition for the fighters that they were looking for. We did one in Susanville, California, and they put in their blurb that we're looking for, quote, amateur fighters, or to be considered to be amateur, quote, amateur, you just didn't, if you were professional and hadn't fought in the last 3 years, then you were considered. And we went to this event. One, it was horrible. The cage was in the sun in the parking lot with no shade, no covering. And it's
Nuclear.
it's nuclear outside. I mean, the canvas was smoking hot. It was, but I'm sitting there. We had a fighter fighting on that card, and I'm looking at this dude warming up, and I'm going, I know this guy. I'm like, it's dumbfounding me because I was having a hard time remembering him. And I'm going, oh shit. I go, who's he fighting? I go, that dude right now should not be fighting him. Technically, I'm like, he hasn't fought in the time period through there, but that dude's got like 20 fights. And he's fighting a dude that's a true 0-0. I'm like,
But at that same event, the logo in the middle was so hot. So one of Dave's training partners was fighting this guy.
he was making a different guy, but he was fighting on that card. But he goes out there. So the fights were going midday, not even in the evening, midday, sun is blaring. We walked out. It was an actual canvas cover for the cage with vinyl logos. And when we went out there, if you were standing on the canvas,
You were okay.
it was tolerable, burning, but tolerable. If you were on the vinyl, man, it was horrible.
Oh,
So,
man.
so we came up with the game plan and said, I give him the center of the cage. Let him have it. That's where the vinyl logo is. Let him have the center. My friend would stay on the outside. My former training partner would stay on the outside. So round one finishes and the guy goes to the corner and we see the doctor walk over and we see the doctor wave the fight off. And then the dude lifts up his foot.
Blisters.
And I saw a flap of skin
Oh,
fall off of his foot. It was, and so it was because he burnt his feet that he
Oh.
couldn't answer the bell for the second round.
oh
I mean,
man.
It was one of the worst events we've been to. I mean, it was, and then that was when
we had to track down the promoter to get paid.
to
too.
get paid.
We found him in a bar.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Because we were told once he was gone, you weren't going to get it. That
So we're like, where is that fucker?
It's crazy how that still happens today.
yeah.
There's still shows that go on and the promoters dip out without paying the fighters.
Now, our first professional fight under California sanctioning, our opponent's group tried to steal and hide my cornering equipment.
What?
Yeah. So we got there. So this was at the Placerville Fairgrounds for Rebel Fighter. Great organization that nothing Rebel Fighter did. And this is a California sanctioned event. So we've got full on California officials, everybody's there. And it's just a big room with like curtains dividing the room. And then they put tables back to back up against the curtain for people to put their stuff on. So I go in and I meet my representative for my corner. I like to chat with them. I like to get friendly with them.
Yeah.
Because usually they're martial artists too. And so I walk my stuff over and I put it on the table. We do our rules meeting and then it's time to go wrap up. And I turn around the corner and my stuff's gone. So I go to the California state rep and I go, I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but my stuff is missing. And he goes, I saw you walk in with it. And he described it. He knew exactly what my stuff looked like. And he goes, hold on. So he goes to the other side and he's back there for about 10 minutes. And when he comes back, he goes, all right. He goes, as long as you're cool, let's not make a big deal out of it. He goes, but I'll just let you know where I found it was under the table in your opponent's corner, covered in their gear.
Wow.
So
Wow. The things people do to try to get an upper hand, huh?
yeah, we won, so it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, the things people do to try to get into other people's heads, you know, things of that nature, it's all kind of comical. In my opinion, like I don't really care. I think it shows a sign of weakness rather than a
Yeah.
sign of strength. So it doesn't when things of that nature come up, you know, it's kind of like when fighters face off and one fighter feels like he's got to do antics. See, I personally, when I'm watching that, I see it as a sign of weakness,
Mhm.
not as a sign of strength. It's the confident fighters don't feel like they need to do that. That's a nervous energy that usually comes to bear. And so for me, it doesn't when our fighters walk away from it, you know, it's actually more motivating for us because it feel, you know, I don't know, it makes us feel a little bit more empowered rather
Yeah.
than, you know, rather than going, oh shit, we should quake in our boots. This guy's tough. You know,
Absolutely. I agree.
you know,
I
I
agree.
get showmanship. Showmanship's cool. I take showmanship, but you know, sometimes you can tell the antics is purely a nervous energy. And this is the only way that they can express it.
Oh yeah.
Um,
We
yeah,
had a fighter on the last card. It was his debut. But he put on the whole tough guy routine and the whole weigh-ins, you know, face off, he was just, you know, crazy eyes staring at the guy. And then during the rules meeting, the day of the fight, he wasn't paying attention to the rules meeting at all. He was just crazy eyes staring the guy down from across the room. And even during the warm-up, I saw on this guy's Instagram story, somebody tagged him afterwards. Even during the warm-up, he was peering through the curtains, doing the crazy eye. And unfortunately, well, this guy ended up losing. He got wheel kicked in the face and TKO'd. And, you know, you would think, okay, he probably should have done a little bit more warming up and a little less staring. But that's actually some of my favorite videos to see on the internet is, you know, the guys being all dramatic, you know, at the weigh-ins and all that stuff. And then they get their asses handed to them in the fight. That's always
so I love to see what the fighters put online in the lead up to the fights.
Mhm.
So we had this one guy that we signed to face him. I forget what organization we were fighting. It's an AMI fight. And his opponent immediately starts doing all these videos online, being like, dude, you better be ready to die in the ring because that's what I'm bringing. I gotta go run. And then he was running. And then the dude pulled out of the fight like a week and a half later. Yeah. Dude put probably 10 videos online.
You better be ready to die.
Talking about how serious he is and doing all this stuff, all these antics and everything else, and then pulls out of the fight about a week and a half later. I mean,
yeah, when you've got
the one that was fighting Christian that went live in the back and was talking about how this kid ain't shit. He's got his mommy and his daddy in his corner.
and we're literally on the other side of the curtain.
We can hear them
listening. So we go on and we're watching their Facebook Live.
That's hilarious.
I mean,
that's awesome. Oh man, yeah. When you've got enough time to be posting all those crazy videos, you're probably not training enough.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. Listen, you need to hype yourself up. You need to promote yourself, promote your brand, promote the fight and the promotion. Absolutely. But, you know, you can always tell when they're doing it for the antics and when they're doing it really just to, you know, promote themselves. There's a difference.
Yeah.
And either way, it's entertaining.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's nothing more annoying than, you know, all that smack talk and then they pull out the fight. Yeah.
I mean,
that's not worth anything to anybody.
Right. Well, especially like the ones that I mean, sometimes it happens. Like we had a fighter, I think we were 2 weeks away from a fight, and we had to call the promoter and say, hey, we got to pull. And we sent him pictures of the dude's hand. He's got stitches in him, things of that nature, because he got now he was
this was the stupidest.
He was hiking, came across a stray dog that was injured,
Wanted to help it.
went to help it, went to
Oh,
pick it up, and got
got
bit.
mauled.
shit.
So
Oof.
Broke his hand.
broke his
Gets
hand,
stitches.
stitches.
He comes back to training. He's like all cut up. His
Oh, he
hands
was
in the
he was
cast.
still willing to go.
He's like, I still want to fight, coach. I'm
He
like,
was still willing to
"Yeah,
go, man.
that-
I'll give him credit for that. But I'm like, dude, like you have open wounds. You got stitches in,
You have
Yeah.
a broken hand.
and you know it's not going to happen.
Oof.
But like you said, like your fight, show up for weigh-ins. Dude can't be found. Don't worry about it. He'll be there day of the fight. Dude can't be found. That is exactly our son's first fight.
Mhm.
Dude couldn't make it to weigh-ins. They said, oh, he got lost. And then they say, but he'll be there day of. And then day of, man, we can't get a hold of him. We don't know where he's at. So, you know, here you are making weight. You sold a whole bunch of tickets and they're mirroring exactly. I mean, our son sold probably 50 tickets for the fight, everything else. And then when they give him an opponent, he weighed in at 154 for his fight for 155. Day of, his opponent weighs 173 pounds. And they're like, well, how much do you weigh? The guy that was going to step up, the guy
Right.
now, the guy that was going to take the step up fight at the last second weighed 173 pounds. Christian stands on the scale. He weighs like 164. And they go, you're within 10 pounds. It's good. So he ends up taking the fight, loses a split decision. But it's interesting because then in the commentary, when they do the commentary on the DVD and on the video, they announce they announce it as if the fight was still at 155, even though truly speaking, even at 170, the dude was 3 pounds
It's not even
over.
a catch weight. That's
It's
literally
not even a catch weight.
Yeah.
But the way they announced it was that our son weighed in at 156 and the other dude weighed in at 155.
Oh, get out of here.
Yeah. And yeah, it was
a mess.
it was a hot mess. So
Terrible.
I mean, yeah, it was a hot mess.
That really sucks. You know, that whole rule where you can fight if you're within 10 pounds. If that's what's advertised ahead of time, I'm cool with that. Actually, we were thinking about that with XFN, was actually creating spreads.
Yeah.
You know, amateurs are still learning their bodies. They're still
Right.
trying to figure out, you know, how to get to the weight class that they think they should be in. And it's always disappointing when you're scheduled for a fight and then your guy comes in a few pounds heavy,
Right.
few, 2-3 pounds heavy, right? 7-10 pounds heavy. That, you know, that's a whole nother story. But, you know, we were considering maybe creating weight class spreads, you know, because if the state allows you, if they consider a featherweight 135 to 146, 136 to 145, that's what's considered a featherweight for amateurs in Florida. Okay, well then maybe just open up that slot and say, hey, you know, there's a fight available in this spread.
Right.
You know, if you make it kind of like jujitsu, right? Jiu-jitsu, not everybody's coming in exactly on weight. You know, there's a
Right.
spread. And as long as you're within that spread, you can compete in that division.
Exactly.
So something that we thought about, something I'm still kind of considering. I don't know how, my concern was how is everybody else going to react to it? Coaches
Right. Yeah.
and fighters. Fighters, I don't think will care as
Well,
much.
it's-
Coaches.
Weight cuts are absolutely crazy anyway. I mean, depending on when weigh-ins are, you may get 24 hours or more to
Mhm.
to rehydrate and everything else. So you get that guy, you know, that's weighing in at 155 pounds, and come fight day, he's walking in nearing 180.
Yeah.
You know, and so the other guy weighs in at 155. So according to the scale, they're the same. But
Right.
come fight day, one guy's weighing 160 something, and the other guy's weighing damn near 180. So, I mean, even in some of those,
If we did the spread though, it would be a same day weigh-in.
exactly.
You know, that way they're not cutting down to meet this high end of the lower weight class. and then blowing up 20, 30 pounds the next day.
Right.
Right.
So, I mean, who knows? We're honestly, we're always trying to find different ideas to not necessarily make it easier for the amateurs, but to help them learn, you
Right.
know, to help them gain that experience. There's a lot of amateurs who come in, and let's say the biggest spread is between lightweight and welterweight,
Yeah.
right? 155 to 170. So you get some of these guys who've never cut weight before. They're not former high school wrestlers or anything like that. They don't know how to cut weight. So they take a fight at 170 because their options are somehow lose 15 pounds and be a 55er, or compete at their walking around weight, which is 170. And then they fight a true 170. And it's
They're cutting
just,
from 200.
you
Right.
can tell by looking at them that they do not belong in the same. And that's actually happened a couple times at XFN.
Yeah.
You know, so
Well-
we've considered doing, you know, in between weight classes, the 165 division
Yeah.
is something that we might be rolling out soon.
Well, and then the part that I always found funny is so two fighters agree to fight. Okay. Let's say 45, 55, doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
But they agree to that weight. And then they're given, typically, unless it's a champ fight, you know, let's UFC with the 1 pound allowance. Now that
Right.
pound allowance is actually supposed to be for scale calibration.
Correct.
Okay. It's not supposed to be for them to now try to make and then complain if they're a couple ounces over.
Exactly.
Their goal was still to make 55. And then if because of a scale issue, they were 55.5, that's why the
Then it's
pound
okay.
allowance is actually supposed to exist.
Exactly.
So the part that kills me is when the one fighter A shows up on weight. Okay. They made it. Fighter B shows up 5 pounds overweight. Okay.
Mhm.
Not even close. But then I love, especially it happens in the AMI side of it, especially AMI, because there's no real repercussion other than fight being off.
Exactly.
That's a repercussion. And really it's more of a repercussion to the promoter
Yep.
than it is, and to the opponent.
Yep.
It's a repercussion for them, all the hard work that they did to try to create, for the promoter to create the opportunity, and then for their opponent, because they did all that work to come there on time. But then I love it because that person comes in, they're overweight severely, and then has the audacity to claim that the other person doesn't want to fight
Right.
because they're questioning, why do I want to fight somebody that's not making the weight? You
Right.
know? And they have the audacity to then be like, well, I thought you wanted to fight. If the weight's a big
Oh,
deal, it's
man.
like, well, if the weight's a big deal, you'd have shown up on weight. I mean,
So that, you know, coaching comes into play,
yes.
Yeah.
right? You know, if you have, you know, a good, I don't want to use the word good because you can interpret that many ways, but if you have a strict coach,
Yes.
you know, who understands the system and understands why you're competing as an amateur, why you need to make weight, and it's all in preparation for the future. That's great. But then you have coaches where I've had coaches tell me, like, my fighter's not cutting a single ounce.
Right.
You don't want to take the fight, it's off.
Then cancel it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. It's like, if the other person doesn't want to fight. So now it's like they cast it on the other person.
Yeah.
Like this fighter wasn't willing to do the work, wasn't willing to make it on weight. And then they want to make it. We're like, well, we came to fight. No, you didn't. If you
Right.
came to fight, you'd have been on weight.
Right.
But now they want to put it on the other people, going, hey, look, you either take the fight because we're not cutting it, or it's off.
So here's now the problem again in Florida with so many different sanctioning organizations. Let's say XFN wants to start, let's say I come up with a way to provide a repercussion for fighters for missing
Right.
weight. As you know, fighters are not allowed to get paid to compete as amateurs, but they are allowed to keep a commission of their ticket sales.
Right.
So what if all of a sudden we were like, all right, well, if you miss weight, you don't get to keep your commission of ticket sales, or you get fined a certain percentage of your commission of ticket sales. Well, you know what's going to happen? They're just going to go turn around and fight at the next promotion. that isn't
Exactly.
doing that. So
Well, and also at the same time, the fighter that made weight, okay, they potentially sold tickets for the fight.
Mhm.
They did all the work. So they end up having to take the fight.
Right.
And sometimes for the wrong reasons. Like
Yeah.
we've had some fights where we've been to the event, and our opponent didn't do the right blood work.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So now it can't be an MMA fight. So now it's got to be either a kickboxing fight or it's off.
Yeah.
We didn't train for a kickboxing fight. We trained for an MMA fight.
Right.
But it's too late because our fighters sold 40 tickets, family and friends, and everybody's showing up. And so now they feel obligated.
Yeah.
And like you said, the promoter is not going to give them their money back. Or at least didn't in this particular instance.
Right.
That's what our fighter said. He goes, well, what do you want to do? And literally, this is at weigh-ins. He just turned his ticket money in. He's like, well, I want my money back.
Right.
And they're like, not going to happen. So what do you want to do? You're either fighting or it's off.
That's messed up though. I'm sorry. So
it is.
That's really messed up on the promoter side, because you should not be waiting as the promoter until the last minute to know if they have the correct blood work.
Right.
And you should not be collecting the money before you know that everything is good to go. What we do at XFN, we require that the blood work be sent to us in advance. We require it a week in advance at least.
Nice.
That way we can take a look at the blood work, and if something is wrong, we can address it right then and there. We have a medical director on staff, Dr. John Maroof. He goes by the Fight Doctor. He overlooks all of the medical testing. If there's a mistake with anything, he can actually order the correct test that you don't have to go into his office and do. He orders the test for you. You go into a lab near you,
right,
and they get the results within 24 hours. So that's something that we've done to kind of, get away from that issue. Because remember, the whole reason why I started
that's a really great idea.
That's smart.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then you don't have that issue with the ticket money.
Right.
If I know 3 days out, a week out, that the fighter doesn't have the correct blood work, I'm not going to wait until the weigh-ins to take his ticket money and then tell both fighters, hey, you're kind of screwed.
Right.
No, I'm going to now use this time to try to find a replacement for the fighter without the correct blood work if he's not going to get the correct blood work done in time.
Right.
And that's my job as a promoter. There's a lot more that a promoter has to do than just book a venue, book a sanctioning body, book a cage, and put some fights together. If that's all you're doing as a promoter, you're a disservice to the community. You're not doing right by the fighters. You're not doing right by the teams, by the coaches, by the fans. You're not doing right by anybody. You're just lining the pockets. So
now to be clear, because I know that some other organizations listen to our podcast and the like. This particular instance, that promoter's not in business anymore.
Yeah.
So, and typically that's the way it works.
Yeah.
There's
only, I think, 4 promotions right now in the state of Florida that have been around for close to 10 years or more, which is how long amateur MMA has been approved in the state of Florida.
Right.
Island Fights.
Yep.
Combat Night, Rise of a Warrior, and XFN. I don't know of any other organization that's been around for more than 3 years at this point.
Yeah.
And those that have been around for that long are struggling because they're not doing right by the community. They're not.
Yeah. And so those are listening. We have done shows with everybody that you've named, great organizations. The one that was this particular issue, like I said, they're not in business anymore.
Yeah.
They're not throwing shows. And that's one of those examples that can show you why they didn't last, why they didn't stick around, and why they wouldn't be supported by the fighters.
Right.
Because unfortunately speaking, it was like people are only forgiving so much, and then when you start to see repeat issues, that's it.
Yeah.
And in this game, you're only as good as your reputation.
Oh yeah.
And that's it. From the fighters aspect, from the coaches, from the promotions. I mean, you're only as good as your reputation.
That's right.
And that's it. Once you lose that, because I mean, same thing. I'm sure you guys get, people saying, hey, I want to fight on your show, but you're looking at them going, you've been a no-show to the last 3 fights that you've signed up. Why would I even, on different different organizations, you haven't shown up for your last 3 fights that you've even said you're going to. Why would they even book you?
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to be your fourth. I mean,
Yeah, Christian, there's a couple that Christian won't even consider for our
Right.
fighters because he does all our matchups and stuff like that. And I've asked him message before, hey, what about this one? He goes, oh hell no.
yeah,
Nope, not
like
touching
that.
it.
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah. No, unfortunately, most of the newer promotions that are coming in, they're not really willing to do the work and do right by the communities. And I feel bad for the fighters and coaches that get convinced to give them a try.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't see the need. Between the 4 organizations that I've listed, there are shows almost every single weekend throughout the year.
Yeah.
These are shows that do everything they're supposed to do, that provide everything they're supposed to provide, and that provide quality, for the fighters and for the fans. And I don't know, call me a creature of habit, but
Yeah.
when something's good.
Well, we just fought on the Combat Night Jacksonville card. I think that was what 2.5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we're fighting this Saturday on the Orlando card.
Yeah, you
Um,
see,
I mean,
there's so many opportunities with good organizations.
and that's the thing. So like we fought multiple times on Combat Night. My lanyard collection is pretty large with Combat Night because for us they're our largest local
Right.
show. But then, for you guys, I think you're the furthest
We've gone
that we've gone.
for Amy.
Correct.
For Amy. Pro's different,
For Amy, yeah, because we did Biloxi, Mississippi for no, 'cause Jake even fought Amy in Biloxi.
but it was kind of a tag along with Christian.
Yeah. But you're about the furthest because I think you were right at about 4 hours for us.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And so, but I mean, that was, like I said,
It was a great experience.
great experience. Everything else, I mean, other than which was COVID, those fights were on Sundays, and
Right.
so my wife and I, so we drove down Sunday morning, did the fights, turned around, left, I think, West Palm at about midnight or 1 a.m.
Whew.
Got to the gym.
We had a 6 a.m. class Monday morning.
Yeah, got to the gym, laid down on the takedown mat,
For an hour.
caught about an hour and a half sleep, and then taught class at 6 a.m.
Ooh, that's rough. That's rough, but that's also dedication on
Yeah.
both ends, dedication to your business and also dedication to your fighters, and I appreciate you guys, being a part of that event. Sunday shows were tough for that reason.
Yeah.
But to be honest, people loved the Sunday shows.
We loved it. It was awesome.
Yeah. I think especially when there's no football going on during the
Yeah.
off season, it's a great filler. But yeah.
But yeah, so we did that we did that twice with you guys, and I know we were talking with Christian as our fight team is starting to get ramped back up. And guys are
Like we have Dewan, Joseph, Alex,
in the 125
the
pound,
new kid,
it's insane.
and
I
Jacob.
mean-
We have 5 125ers.
Wow.
We're like, Christian's like, all right, so this is the game plan.
Right.
You guys are going to get the title in each of the major organizations.
There you
Yeah,
go.
we're like, so Dark Wolf will control the 125 pound titles in all major organizations.
That's a good plan. Why not? Actually, I think we have some openings at 125. So if you
We
need
got
anything
plenty.
for your
Right.
fighters,
So
yeah.
We got a lot of them.
yeah, those guys are fun. They're a kick, high energy, and but man, they're fun. you
Yeah,
know?
definitely. Fun division to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people, they don't give the flyweights the credit I think that they deserve because they don't have that knockout. They're not heavyweights, right?
Right. But they're
Um,
fun fights, man.
Yeah.
Man, but you know what? I mean, people talk about the heavyweights a lot, but truly speaking, the heavyweights don't typically have you on the edge of your seat.
Right.
I mean, if the heavyweights bang and it goes down in the first round, you're like, that fight was amazing. But when you're watching two heavyweights slug it out in the third round,
Yeah,
you're not really saying how amazing that fight was.
no.
I
You're right.
remember there was this one fight we were watching. We were live. I can't remember which,
Is this the one where okay.
but these two guys, I think they set the record for most haymakers thrown in a fight that
That
never
missed.
landed. I mean, they literally just were throwing haymakers at each other, whiff, 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 and then they would point at each other, yeah, man, great fight, and whiff, 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 you know. And then at one point in time, they're both sitting there with their hands on their knees, going, yeah, buddy. And then
Oh my gosh.
It was the most bizarre fight
it
I
was.
think I've ever
It
watched.
was-
One of the recent heavyweight title fights that we did it was last year. There's just not many heavyweights. It's tough to find. But yeah, last year, one of the heavyweight title fight that we did was honestly one of the more disappointing fights that we've put on. They were both gassed within a minute and a half of the first round. And it played out it ended up being finished in the beginning of the third, mainly because one of them was just completely gassed.
Right.
But it was just literally one guy was on his hands and knees, just hugging, his opponent's leg, and the opponent was too tired to do anything. So he's sitting up, huffing and puffing while the guy's literally just like holding onto his leg. It was sad. It was sad.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was pretty sad. But hey, they're amateurs. They're still learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we I think it was at Jackson Rancheria in the cage in their parking lot. Now, when they did it at Jackson Rancheria would do a good job on the Indian.
They didn't.
They did in the evenings. They did a great job. But watching this one fight, two dudes throwing down, and then we see something rolling around in the cage, and we're like,
No.
what is that? And the referee stops. Dude goes over, picks up his cup, puts it back in his shorts. They start brawling again. And within about 30 seconds, here it is. The cup's rolling around the cage again.
Oh man.
And I mean, it happened probably about 4 times before the
He
fight.
must not have
finally
had
got
a jock strap on.
I mean,
I think he was just putting it in his shorts.
Yeah,
I mean-
I think so. Oh man, I'm glad you said cup and not something else.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that would be horrible.
yeah. We had one of the craziest things to ever happen at an XFN show. Female fight, and one of the girls got kneed in the stomach, and we didn't know until after the fight was over, but it wasn't a pool of sweat on the floor. It was,
Gotcha.
she evacuated her
Right.
bladder. Man, that not one of the finer moments at XFN, I'll tell you that. But they got it real clean. We had a good cage crew, and they were wearing gloves, and it was all clean and sanitized for the next fight. So
One of our favorite moments, we had this one young kid, man. He was talented. He went military. That's the reason why he's not currently training with us. But man, kid was good. And he goes out, and first round easily could have been a 10-8. Very dominant round. Couple times in there where he nearly finishes his opponent. I mean, but dominant. Comes out second round, okay, for 2 minutes and 45, 46, 47 seconds. It's another 10-8. He gets the kid up against the cage. He's going to town, backs away, drops his hands, and the kid launches, boom, big overhand right, staggers him. And if it wasn't for the bell, it would have been a TKO right then.
ooh,
But saved by the bell. Fortunately, now he comes out third round, and it's not his day. He does get stopped in the third, but now him and his opponent are now in the back,
I know what your
and
story
they're
is now.
and our guy unfortunately is trash talking him. He's like, dude, I was kicking your ass. I almost and
They're
he
both
starts
hurling in the
throwing
same
up in the
can.
trash can.
Oh man.
So at one point in time, both guys are huddled over the same trash can, throwing up, still trash talking each
the
other.
entire time.
I mean, now,
That's
granted,
awesome.
it was friendly trash talk.
Yeah.
It
You
was
know,
like, I was so kicking your ass.
yeah, he's like, no, man, but I got the win. And
Oh man, please tell me you have video of that. That's
no,
hilarious.
I wish.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, they were both hugging the trash can, vomiting, just both good. I mean, good, friendly trash talk, no animosities between them. The guys, hugged it out and left, on good terms and everything else. But I mean, watching them, it's hard to trash talk when you're throwing up. And
They accomplished it
Yeah.
but it's hard to take anybody serious when they're throwing up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for real. That's
It
great.
was a blast. I mean, the fight game, it is such a strange environment. I mean, you can probably name it and somebody's got a story about it happening. I definitely say, I mean, most MMA fighters are way more intelligent than most people would ever imagine. I mean, these are some very, MMA is not a dumb sport. It's it's a sport that, generally speaking, like I said, most people, really intelligent people. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
really intelligent. And then every once in a while, there's that, we're at one show, you talked about your warm up was inside the handicap stall, handicap restroom.
Yep.
So we're at a show and the restroom is the warm up area. So people are walking around barefoot in the bathroom getting ready. And the referee comes in to give this is a pro fight. This isn't even AMI. This is pro.
Whoa.
And the referee goes to come in and give the speech to the guys and say, hey, so make sure all your nails are trimmed and everything else. Don't forget about your the guy goes, oh shit, reaches down, grabs his foot and starts chewing.
No.
Yes.
Oh,
and so
man.
the whole locker room in that moment is like, oh, and like, we're just searching for nail clippers.
I'm like, dude, you don't have to do this. Hold on,
And-
I got you.
And other people, cell phones, boom, they're just.
Was that in Florida?
Yes.
Oh my God. How did they allow a pro fight to have locker rooms in the bathrooms? That's
They
crazy.
did.
In the bathrooms.
Wow.
This is one of Christian's first pro fights.
Yep.
Wow. Unreal. Oh,
And yeah.
that's
So
great.
we're in the bathrooms, and yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that it was. I can't remember if it was that same fight or a different one. So it's cramped space. It's tight quarters, and this is a bathroom. So the commodes are right there, and one of the fighters goes, "All right, guys, no one shits on the bus." He's like, I know there's bathrooms right here, but if you got to do that, you go out. Okay.
Right.
So same dude's got his earphones on and is laying down underneath the countertop in the bathroom and rips the loudest fart, but he's got his headphones in.
So he didn't know it. Oh man.
And everybody, like right then, like people are throwing stuff at him. And they're like,
Oh,
dude,
man.
I thought you said. He's like, oh, I didn't think anybody heard that.
Oh man.
I mean, like I said, the fights in general are, I mean, they're such a fun thing. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, as soon as you think that you're ready for it, you're not, because anything can and will happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the fun part.
Yeah. Well, listen, the fight community in general is a great community. You got a little bit of everything, but one of my favorite things to see is after these fights, like you said earlier, the two opponents hugging it out, or even just, smack talking, but all in good fun, right?
Yeah.
Becoming friends, training together, making each other better. Like that's That's really cool. People perceive fighters as being these aggressive and barbaric types of, individuals, and that's really not true.
Yes.
From my experiences, like, sure, like they have to be aggressive during the fight. That's the sport that they compete in.
Right.
But some of the most aggressive fighters that I've met are so docile in the real world. And,
Yeah.
That's just, that's the reality of it.
Well, and unfortunately, I think some of that has to do with the antics that they see in some of the weigh-ins, or when they're watching some of the pre-fight hype, when two fighters. Unfortunately, man, I hate to say it, but I mean, some of that stuff is rigged. I mean, it's staged for people's benefit, to look like right now. I mean, name me a bare knuckle anything that doesn't have some sort of commotion to help sell the fight.
Dude, I swear, when you were just saying all that, I was actually thinking about a recent video that was put out in an attempt to hype up a bare knuckle championship fight, where it was a female fighter walking up, to steal the belt from the current belt holder. And you can just tell, like, it was worse than WWE acting.
Yeah.
It was, but they got to do what they got to do to sell the show, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
See, I think, to be honest with you, I mean, and I said this about when the UFC did the Ultimate Fighter. I'm like, man, like I was disappointed when they started putting alcohol in the house. And to me, I stopped watching the Ultimate Fighter a long time ago, because it was no longer.
He wanted to see the training.
I wanted to see the training. I think there's enough drama by watching these guys being held to a professional accountability, prepping for the fight. I think there's enough drama just there that they didn't need to manufacture it by putting alcohol and things, because the show eventually turned into antics in the house, and then let's watch a fight at the end.
Right.
And so all I ended up doing was just wanting to fast forward and watch the fight. That's it. I could care less about the rest of the show.
I agree, man. I agree. But then you'd never have I just want to bang, let me bang.
Yeah. That's a great one.
No, the sport's evolved so much over the years. It continues to evolve, and it's just going to keep getting better. Every time that you think that, wow, look at how far we've come, look at all that we've done, look at what, we've accomplished. And I'm talking about the community as a whole.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, there's so much more to come. The excitement never stops.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what's fun about this sport.
So what do you guys have planned for XFN coming up?
So we have a summer lineup. We have June 25th in West Palm Beach at Renegades. Also July 30th in West Palm Beach as well. And then August 27th, we're doing a Pro-Am show with World Class Combat Sports.
Nice. Yeah. With Ralph Garcia.
No.
Oh, no.
This is that other one.
The other one. That's right. They got the little lightning bolt thing.
Yes.
In the middle of their logo.
Yeah, exactly. So that show is August 27th.
Have we done anything with World Class Combat?
Not yet.
Yeah, I don't think we do anything with them yet.
Yeah. Well, love to have you guys a part of it.
That's right. Ralph is World Class Fight League.
Right.
Yeah, the WCFL.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's another good organization. I like some of the stuff that we've done with.
Yeah, I've never been to one live, but all the pictures and videos that I've seen, it looks awesome. Looks like they have a really cool venue.
Yeah, they do.
Now,
the venue's really cool.
Yeah, it's at like at least the ones that we've been to, they've always been at the same building, which is a National Guard Armory. It's like I said, every event's always been in the same building, so I've never seen anything different.
Right.
But yeah, they've been a really good organization as well.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool. But yeah, we've got the summer lineup, and then end off the year with 2 more shows. I think September and November. Oh, and then actually in December, we're working on a private event. It's like a semi-private event. We've done a couple shows with this organization called the Red Meat Lovers Club. Red Meat Lovers Club is kind of like a gentleman's group.
Okay.
some high rollers that, enjoy to get together for some high-end food and top shelf drinks with some entertainment. And one of the pro shows that we did back in 2018, 19, they did in conjunction with us. They actually held one of their events. They had 350 of their members, come out to the event. They took up the entire VIP section.
Wow. Nice.
It's a really cool show. So they actually reached out to us. They want to do another show with us in December, at a very cool location, which I'm excited to announce later on this year. So be on the
Nice.
lookout for that. That's going to be a really cool show for sure.
Do you remember when there were some fights thrown at the Playboy Mansion?
No.
Yeah, there was a brief moment in time, kind of like what you're talking about. Very, very select group allowed to be in attendance, but yeah, they if I have it correctly, they did like one or two fights at the Playboy Mansion on the grounds.
That's all.
Everything else, it was a very, very small select group that got to go. We weren't in it. But yeah,
been there.
and then like, do you remember back in the Bodog days?
Yep.
Bodog fights.
Yeah.
Those were all like very secluded, like the one where literally it's like on the beach in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
Mainly because Bodog couldn't come to the States.
Right.
The online gambling and everything else. We had a couple friends that fought on some of those cards, but it was another one where very secluded, very limited access, only a few select people got to actually be in attendance for some of those fights. So I mean, that sounds like the one you're getting ready to do. It sounds like it's going to be a really, really cool event.
Yeah, we did a show. It was actually our first live show after COVID. We did because we were easing into the whole audience, situation. We didn't want to go right into a huge crowd, because we wanted to keep it as controlled and safe as possible.
Right.
So we did a show at a classic car museum with about 150 people in attendance, but it was, all VIP. Dinner was provided. It was
Nice.
really, upscale event. And it was literally in a classic car museum. So the fighters walking down a row of, Mustangs and
That's so cool.
Lamborghinis.
So you guys do it like the old Von Damme film, was it Lionheart? All the cars parked in and they're fighting in the headlights.
Yeah, actually, the owner of the place actually had said, "Hey, we can have all the headlights turn on and do that," but it didn't work out with the production. But
Yeah.
but yeah, no, that was cool. I'd love to go back there at some point. But yeah, we like to do something different every now and then. And being that we are on Flow Combat, it's a little bit easier because the audience can still tune in live.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Online. So
we
yeah,
have to say your production value on your video, on the watching it, is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. We pride ourselves in that for sure.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah. Again, the whole point of putting on these shows was to put on a show that I wanted to compete on.
Right.
So for me, it's more of like, what would I want as a fighter? How would I want it to look? And, if you take a look at our brand, it's very much influenced by the UFC. All the details, our gloves, our, the custom canvas that we use, our posters, the video production, the tail of the tapes, the intros, the walkouts. You have this perfect model in front of you, which is the UFC, and that's what everybody wants, right? So
Right.
As an amateur fighter, some of these guys may never go pro. Some of them may go pro, but may never make it to a big show. So to be able to, give them this experience, and they have this footage that they can keep forever and then show their kids and their grandkids one day, like, to me, that's just as huge to be a part of as to be a part of a fighter who makes it to the UFC.
Right. Yeah.
Or Bellator or PFL or any of the above. So I really enjoy being a part of all these fighters' journeys. I just want to have good experiences with all of them, and for them to have good experiences with XFN. At the end of the day, we're open to criticism. You know, if we can ever do things better, we will, you know, and we're constantly trying to improve. We're constantly trying to, you know, streamline the way we do things, to make it easier and more proficient for the experience as a whole.
Right.
And even since the last time that you guys competed with us, we've changed some things in our system to make it even easier and even smoother.
Nice.
And, I'm excited for, you know, whenever we can have you guys back, for you guys to see all the,
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
and
So-
experience it firsthand.
So if anybody is trying to check you guys out, why don't you give a quick little shout out on your social media? Like, you know, obviously you've got your Facebook and Instagram. So how can they
Yeah.
how can they
So
search you guys?
on social media, we're at XFN Fights. You can also check out our website, xfnfights.com. If you're looking to fight and you're a competitor, we have a fighter registration tab on xfnfights.com. You fill out a registration form that goes right to our matchmakers, and that's how you get the process started. You can also go to our YouTube channel, XFN Extreme Fighting Nation. You can see pretty much all the events as early as XFN 3, I believe.
Yeah, you guys have a very large library.
Yeah,
The fights.
and you can also tune in live on Flow Combat.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Right. Well, because yeah, we have listeners right now that we're happy. We saw Australia, Italy,
Awesome.
the UK. So,
He's so happy about
I
this.
am happy about that.
Yeah.
I am happy about that. Now I was a little
We're
disappointed
international now.
when Melissa was giving me the demographic breakdown. She's like, "Oh, look, you know, 75% are women." I was like, "Whoa, that is cool." She goes, "No, it's all dudes."
Oh, that's funny.
At first, I was like, "Wow, seriously, if we've got like 75% women listening to this thing," I'm
You're
like,
doing something right, man.
that she's like, "No, I read it wrong. It's all dudes."
That's hilarious. No, but that's great. I mean, you guys have exposure in you know, international now, and that's a huge
Working on it.
accomplishment. Congratulations.
Yeah, so we're getting there. It's fun. We enjoy this thing. It's like having a school. It's like fighting and everything else. We just dig doing it. We dig being able to talk to cool people. I like background stories. I like history. I like you know, motivations, like what drives people, you know, things of that nature. And unfortunately, when we're at the fights, we don't get a chance to really talk with you guys much.
We're
You know,
working.
it's almost all business. So.
That's true.
But
Very true.
we appreciate the work you guys are doing. Like I said, XFN is an incredible organization.
Can't wait to fight with you guys again.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to see if we can get something hooked up with some of our 25ers.
Yeah.
And,
Our million.
Anything you need.
subscribers.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for having me. It really was great catching up with you guys.
That was
awesome, man. I
awesome.
appreciate it.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Awesome, man. See you later.
All right. Bye.